Hello, this is Pastor Bella Alexino Sage. Good evening, God girls, as we continue the teaching on the book of Esther. We're going into chapter 7. So the king and Haman went to dine with Queen Esther. Yes, and so now Queen Esther is going to let the king know what's on her mind. Remember, this is the second day of the banquet, where initially she didn't say anything to the king when the king was ready to give her up to half his kingdom. All right, so don't be impulsive when you have a serious matter to discuss with whoever, be it your husband, be it in a meeting at work, be it business related, ministry related. Take your time and be very prayerful, seeking the right angle and approach. And also remember, I've said it all the time, that if you're going to have any meeting whatsoever, you have to pray first so God can go ahead of you and really prepare the person's heart and mind to receive what you are saying. This happens a lot in marriage. There is a right time to approach your husband with a matter. If you approach him at the wrong time, he can turn you down and it cannot go in your favor. But if you take the time to pray and also be physically wise, don't rush into it. Prepare your banquet, pamper the man, and let the timing be right. So always approach at the right time. And sometimes you may be talking to someone and they would have approved of your request, but because you came at the wrong time, it doesn't go in your favor. So even as a wife, you have to be very careful about this. You should know your husband, know when he's more likely to listen to you. Some of you have husbands who watch football, and when they're watching football, they don't hear anything. They don't even want to eat right then. They don't want to be disturbed, right? Yeah, some of you guys know what I'm talking about. So that would be a very wrong time to say, honey, I need to see you about something. It'll be like, I can't even hear you right now. I can't see you. All I see is football. All right. So anyways, Esther did not impulsively give her request. She took her time, prayed, and of course you can see, or as you will see shortly, her husband is very temperamental. Remember when we started in chapter 1? Very, very temperamental man. So you got to be careful with these kind of men. Okay, he's a king. He's used to making decrees. So you really have to approach him at the right time with whatever is on your heart. So what kind of man are you married to? Or who's your business partner? Or what kind of boss do you have? Even if your boss is not a man, what is her attitude like? Okay, so you got to be wise physically and spiritually when presenting a case to another human being and expecting it to go in your favor. First of all, you have to take it to God. That's the Esther principle. If you want to receive the favor of men, you must first take the matter to God. Okay? Verse 2, and on the second day at the banquet of wine, the king again said to Esther, what is your petition, Queen Esther? It shall be granted to you. And what is your request? Up to half the kingdom it shall be done. So the king is, it's day 2. He's still pleased with her. It's still what he has said. It's still on the table. He's ready to give her half of his kingdom. And that is such an abundant favor from God towards this queen. And it is something you should continually pray for as an Esther in your generation, to receive the abundant favor of God. I'm telling you, there's nothing like it, where you just have people doing things that would have probably cost you a lot of money. Like, for instance, you traveling international, you're traveling with the economy class, and for whatever reason on that day you were bumped up to first class free of charge. The air hostess comes to you and says, ma'am, we have an extra seat in the first class, and we would like you to come over to the first class. That's favor? It's happened to people. So the favor of God cannot be trifled with. It is priceless. So pray for it, seek it daily, that wherever you go, you have his favor following you. And life is a whole lot easier when you have the backing of heaven. Oh, it is so much more easier. So look at that. king is ready to give up half of his kingdom, but that's not what Esther wants. Esther doesn't want half of the kingdom. She's kingdom-minded, remember. She's not materialistic. She's a woman of purpose. She has her people to save. And you will see it in the way she phrases this statement. Very, very wise woman. Esther was wise. Verse 3, Then Queen Esther answered and said, If I have found favor in your sight, O king, and if it pleases the king, let my life be given me at my petition and my people at my request. Look at the humble way she approaches her husband. Again, when you are approaching your husband, be a woman of humility. And humility doesn't mean that you're stupid or you're a doormat. Just have the right tone. You know, here in Nigerian culture, to show respect, when we're greeting elderly people, the women kneel, at least in Yoruba culture, they kneel, or in the other tribes, they would bend, something like a bow to show respect, right? But what we are finding out is even though a person is outwardly bowing or kneeling, they're not doing so in their heart. They may be doing so with an attitude. They may have a mean look on their face, disrespectful, whatever. So it's clear and it's apparent to whoever you're kneeling to or bowing to that you don't really respect. You're just doing things physically. This is also apparent to your husband. When you make a request to him and your tone is not right, even if you look peaceful or you I don't know, they can read into these things. So you really have to be a woman that spends time with God for God to help you in those areas where maybe you're impatient, maybe you're someone who reacts quickly to situations. You need to spend time with God and let God calm you down. Esther, woman of wisdom, verse 4, For we have been sold, my people and I, to be destroyed, to be killed, and to be annihilated. Had we been sold as male and female slaves, I would have held my tongue, although the enemy could never compensate for the king's loss. Look at her strategy. She doesn't say the Jews are going to be destroyed. She says, my people and I. By putting herself in this, she has his attention. She has all of his attention. Because now is the great reveal where Esther had come into the palace and she had hidden herself. She did not make it clear that she was a Jew. But this is the time of her reveal. She's revealing herself. And what a great time to reveal herself. So she's making herself a part of the problem. Not as, oh, I'm a queen and the Jews are being destroyed. No, she says, my people and I. That gets the king's attention. That gets her husband's attention because he loves her. And it's like, excuse me? You're trying to kill my woman? What? Verse 5. So King Ahasuerus answered and said to Queen Esther, For who is he? And where is he who would dare presume in his heart to do such a thing? I can just imagine him. He is angry, like who on earth, who would dare want to destroy my queen and her people? And so we have Haman, who's happily coming to this banquet, thinking Esther views him in high esteem. He doesn't know that his time is up. Again, when you plan against the people of God, I'm sorry for you. I am so sorry for you. Such a person cannot end well. This is Haman's last time to be alive and well. Verse 6, and Esther said, the adversary and enemy is this wicked Haman. Points him out boldly. So Haman was terrified before the king and queen. Then the king arose in his wrath from the banquet of wine and went into the palace garden. Ooh, he's angry. He needs to walk it off and cool off. Haman uses that opportunity to beg. But Haman stood before Queen Esther, pleading for his life, for he saw that evil was determined against him by the king. When the king returned from the palace garden to the place of the banquet of wine, Haman had fallen across the couch where Esther was. Then the king said, "Will he also assault the queen while I am in the house?" As the word left the king's mouth, they covered Haman's face. This is a man of action. King Ahasuerus is not wasting any time. He is angry on behalf of his wife. He is highly upset. He rises up to defend his wife. Again, a husband should be a protector to you. For this cause, a man shall leave his father and his mother and cleave to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. Your husband should be able to protect you, should stand up for you, should guard you. This is what the king is doing for Esther right now, because he is angry on her behalf. He doesn't know who her people are. He's just being the king of Persia. But she presents this to him, and he is angry on her behalf, and he has to take action on her behalf. That is what a husband should do for his wife. A lot of wives are not protected by their husbands, and it is sad. Your husband should stand up for you. Just as you stand by your husband's side, he should stand up for you and protect you. King Ahasuerus doesn't waste any time protecting Esther. He goes up to the garden to cool off, to think, okay, how am I going to handle this? And then he comes back, and Haman is on the couch, breaking all protocols. The king is like, what? You have the audacity to assault my queen? Oh, that's it. You are condemned. That's it. I don't even want to listen to any pleas or whatever. I can't even discuss this with you. Like, Haman, how could you do this? You know, normally after going to cool off, you would be a little rational and say, okay, let me investigate further. Let me find out why Haman would want to, kill my queen and her people. That's the whole thing about cooling down your anger. But when he comes out of the garden where he had walked off some of his anger, he is inflamed, seeing Haman boldly approaching Esther, and the king is like, oh no, this just does not look good to me. I don't like it, and I'm gonna just get rid of him. And this was Haman, who was being prepped to be second in command in the land of Persia. Look at how power was given to him, and power is being stripped from him, because by covering his face, he is condemned to death. He is not allowed to look upon the king and the queen ever again. So by his face being covered, that is a clear message that Haman is about to be executed. Verse 9. Now Harbona, one of the eunuchs, said to the king, "Look, the gallows 50 cubits high, which Haman made for Mordecai, who spoke good on the king's behalf, is standing at the house of Haman." Then the king said, "Hang him on it." I mean, look at what Harbona is saying. He's basically, some people have a way of talking that would really incite you to take action. So he's saying, this gallows were for Mordecai, Mordecai, who did good to the king. That even inflames the king some more. He gets angry, like, Haman had the guts to create gallows for someone who basically saved my life. Oh, hang him on it. So you can see, as I said, that the king is very temperamental. He is quick to get angry, quick to react. So Esther knew her husband very well. If you're married to such a man, you have to be very careful and very, very wise, all right? Remember, Vashti was dethroned because she took it for granted that she was married to a temperamental man. Okay, so Esther knew her man. And do you see her strategy? Always approaching him with humility. Always approach. I mean, humility works for everyone, but especially when someone is temperamental like King Ahasuerus, you always have to make sure your tone of voice is right, your approach is sweet and kind and gracious. That's just the way it is. So Esther knew how to handle her man. And now her man has handled her enemy. Verse 10, so they hanged Haman on the gallows that he had prepared for Mordecai. Then the king's wrath subsided. So the king was angry all through this, and now he's calm. Okay, so Haman, no one knew that Esther was a Jew. So this was really a big shock even to Haman. Like, wow, he had been planning to kill all these people. How stupid was he? You know, that these are the queen's people. You cannot win against that. The queen, the beloved queen, and the king took his time to choose, is a Jew. She's a Jew and you want to kill her people. Oh, Haman, you can't win this. And so that is the end of Haman, who the devil raised to be an enemy to the Jews. But again, you cannot battle against God. That's why I tell you all, God girls, to faithfully follow God. Stand up for God and God will stand up for you. Look at how God is standing up for Esther, for Mordecai here in this space and time as they boldly stand up for him. And that's another thing. You have to be bold about your faith. You have to trust in God no matter what, no matter how difficult it is, no matter what you're facing. Mordecai was facing death, yet he refused to bow to Haman. So you really need to spend time with God and say, Father, give me that boldness to stand up for you, come what may. Let me stand up for you. Let me be all about you, no matter what I'm threatened with. Let me stand up for you, just like Daniel in Babylon. All right? And Mordecai and Esther in Persia. These are God's children in foreign lands. And remember, this world is a foreign land to us. We have people around us doing all kinds of ungodly things. We should not be joining them. We should stand up for righteousness and truth and holiness. We must stand up for God always. Even if the rest of the world is doing crazy stuff, we should not say we're going with the flow. We know the truth. The truth is here in the Word of God. So let these lives be an example to you that when you're faced with ungodliness, you stand up for godliness. Stand up for what is right, what you know is right. Don't be doing what other people are doing. Live for God. Please God. Be a God pleaser, never a people pleaser. Chapter 8. On that day, King Ahasuerus gave Queen Esther the house of Haman, the enemy of the Jews. And Mordecai came before the king, for Esther had told how he was related to her. So Esther is now very open with her husband. Hey, you know what? I'm actually related to Mordecai. And so, of course, knowing that, the king is going to exalt him some more. Verse 2, so the king took off his signet ring, which he had taken from Haman, and gave it to Mordecai, and Esther appointed Mordecai over the house of Haman. So what was intended for evil is now given over to Mordecai, a good man, a godly man, and that all that evil from the house of Haman is forever destroyed, because Mordecai, a godly man, is now in charge. So it really makes me think of our various communities, our various nations, the importance of having godly leaders. It should always be our prayer that God will really raise Daniels in the land to lead nations, righteous people to lead, because even if a country has been known for evil, when a leader is righteous, it does help. It turns things around. So the house of Haman, which was known for evil toward the Jews, has now been handed over to Mordecai, and of course, it's all good now. It's all good because a godly leader is in charge. Now Esther spoke again to the king, fell down at his feet. Did you take note of that? Humility. And implored him with tears to counteract the evil of Haman the Agagite and the scheme which he had devised against the Jews. And the king held out the golden scepter toward Esther. So Esther arose and stood before the king. Again, that golden scepter signifies favor. I will hear you. Come on, approach me. Feel free to let me know what's on your heart, on your mind. Again, as I said, even though she was his wife, she was his queen. So she had to know that he's a king. He's my husband, but he's a king. So you need to know how to approach your husband accordingly. I keep saying this. You need to respect his office. Let's say he's, I don't know, an ambassador or the president of some nation or the pastor of a church. You need to respect the office that he occupies. You need to still respect that also. Even though she's his wife, she falls at his feet in humility. She approaches him as the king that he is. Now, when you are in a marriage and you've been married for years, because of the level of intimacy, you're able to be really familiar with your spouse, where, even if he's years upon years older than you, the level of intimacy with him, you can call him by his name, right? Without any repercussions, right? So, just as I keep on going back to the Obamas, where to the world he's President Obama, but to his wife he's Barack, okay? She's not going to be addressing him as, yes, Mr. President, yes, Mr. President, while they're in the bedroom together. Does that make sense? Because of the level of intimacy they have. But of course, out in public, she must respect his office. She must respect his office out there in public. So you need to understand that as a wife, that even if you have access to your husband and your husband is a very great man, please respect him publicly. Observe all protocols and of course respect him privately. Don't be so familiar with him that you disrespect him. At the end of the day, he has been created by God to be the head of your household. So you must respect him accordingly. So again, Esther humbly falls out at his feet. She's a queen in her own right. She has the authority in her right not to bow to the king. She has that. And Vashti utilized that authority and it did not go well for her. At the end of the day, no matter how powerful you are, no matter how great you are, you must remain humble. You must remain humble. Okay, so verse 5, and said, if it pleases the king, and if I have found favor in his sight, and a thing seems right to the king, and I am pleasing in his eyes. Look at the way this woman is talking. She wants something from the king, but look at the way she is presenting it. Are you taking note of that? As much as she wants something, she is presenting it by saying, if it pleases you, and if I have found favor in your sight, and if this thing seems right to you, and I am pleasing in your eyes. You see this back and forth thing? Wise woman, very, very wise in the way she's presenting her request. That already puts the king in a place to accept whatever she's saying because of the way she's presenting it. She's not demanding. She's asking nicely, very nicely. Let it be written to revoke the letters devised by Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, which he wrote to annihilate the Jews who are in all the king's provinces. For how can I endure to see the evil that will come to my people? Or how can I endure to see the destruction of my countrymen? So Esther had a two-part problem and a two-part approach. First of all, she had to let the king know what was going on and have Haman destroyed, but the decree still stands. So Esther's back again to make sure that this decree does not stand. And whatever the king decrees back then, he does not go back on it. So this is a tough dilemma. Like, how on earth is the king going to turn this around? That's how she falls at his feet, looking for him to just cancel that decree. But this is what the king decides to do. Then King Ahasuerus said to Queen Esther and Mordecai the Jew, indeed I have given Esther the house of Haman, and they have hanged him on the gallows because he tried to lay his hand on the Jews. Again, when your husband marries you, he stands up for you. He protects all that you're about. He steps up even in your family. Even though the Lord has declared that he shall leave his father and his mother, he's marrying you. He should be a great person to your family members, to your father, to your mother, to your siblings. He should be like an elder brother to them. He should look out for them. He should be caring towards them. So you see this in the king, where The Jews are now of extra importance to the king because his queen, his beloved queen, is a Jew. Verse 8. So the king gives them some power. You yourselves, that's Esther and Mordecai, write a decree concerning the Jews as you please in the king's name, and seal it with the king's signet ring. For whatever is written in the king's name and sealed with the king's signet ring, no one can revoke. So the king's scribes were called at that time in the 3rd month, which is the month of Sivan, on the 23rd day, and it was written according to all that Mordecai commanded to the Jews, the satraps, the governors, and the princes of the provinces from India to Ethiopia, 127 provinces in all, to every province in its own script, to every people in their own language, and to the Jews in their own script and language. This is a serious matter. Everyone has to know this decree. Esther and Mordecai are in charge of this decree. Verse 10, and he wrote in the name of King Ahasuerus, sealed it with the king's signet ring, and sent letters by couriers on horseback, riding on royal horses, bred from swift steeds. Okay, so by these letters, the king permitted the Jews who were in every city to gather together and protect their lives, to destroy, kill, and annihilate all the forces of any people or province that would assault them, both little children and women, and to plunder their possessions. Look at that. So this decree of the king, the original decree where Haman had sent out a decree for all the Jews to be destroyed, right? This still stands. Now the king is giving them power to defend themselves. What are we learning from this as children of God? Victory is ours, but there is a process we must go through. We must still fight that battle. So God has given the children of Israel victory, but they're still going to be attacked on that day. Do you see that? As much as God raised Esther as a deliverer, as much as God has delivered the Jews, they're still going to have to go through the process expecting an attack on that day, although God has promised them the victory. So as a Christian, as a God girl, be ready for battle always. The devil is going to keep attacking you. He's going to keep sending stuff your way. As long as you're a child of God, you will have to battle. You're going to have to battle for your destiny, battle for the life that you desire. Battle in your marriage, battle over your children, battle over the blessings that God gives to you. You're going to have to battle. So I really needed to draw this out because as much as we talk about all the time, Esther was a deliverer, the Jews were delivered, they still had, that original decree was not canceled by the king, because whatever he decrees, he cannot revoke it. Nobody can revoke it. But now he is sending another decree that, okay, you all are going to be attacked, but you have the power now to defend yourselves. Protect yourself. You have my permission to kill whoever wants to kill you. All right, so the Jews still have to go through the process of battle. Verse 12, on one day in all the provinces of King Ahasuerus, on the 13th day of the 12th month, which is the month of Adar. Again, remember we did our Esther fast starting on the 13th of Adar. Verse 13, a copy of the document was to be issued as a decree in every province and published for all people, so that the Jews would be ready on that day to avenge themselves on their enemies. The couriers who rode on royal horses went out, hastened and pressed on by the king's command, and the decree was issued in Shushan the citadel. Okay, so letting them know that day of attack is coming upon you. Be ready to protect yourselves. You have permission to kill whoever is seeking to kill you. Verse 15, so Mordecai went out from the presence of the king in royal apparel of blue and white, with a great crown of gold and a garment of fine linen and purple. And the city of Shushan rejoiced and was glad. The Jews had light and gladness, joy and honor. So even if they were expecting battle, they were joyful, knowing that they have the victory because they've spent time with God. They are God's chosen people, and all shall be well. They're not even afraid of the battle that's coming. So as a child of God, expect battles. Don't be afraid of it. Be ready. Be ready for the enemy. In whatever way he wants to attack you, Be ready. You must press on and keep fighting the good fight until your life is over as a child of God. Verse 17. And in every province and city, whatever the king's command and decree came, wherever the king's command and decree came, the Jews had joy and gladness, a feast and a holiday. Then many of the people of the land became Jews because fear of the Jews fell upon them. Do you see that? Even the Persians are becoming Jews now. Okay, because it is clear that God is always with them. Know who you are. Know who you carry within you. Know that you are a God girl. Don't let anything or anyone intimidate you. Even the process that you are going through, just know that as long as you're faithful to God, as long as you have God, it's all going to turn around in your favor. Don't let anything move you or shake you. If you're losing your house, if your spouse is filed for divorce, if it is this, if it is that, you got an evil report from the doctor, don't let anything shake you. Just know that as long as you have God, the battle is won. You have the victory. You're just going through the process. But God has the power to turn it all around in your favor. Your case is different. You will be singled out as a God girl in your community, in your career, in your ministry. You will see it. Because that is my covenant with God. The favor of God will find you. All those things that people are running around seeking, they will find you. You don't even have to seek for it. Your job is to just remain faithful to God and be in obedience to God. The things that are finding me these days, I'm not even looking for it. People are just handing it to me. I'm not looking for it. That's the favor of God. To God be all the glory. So this is the end of Esther chapter 8. We have 2 more chapters left. And the book of Esther will be concluded. Remember to be an Esther in your generation. Remember to stand up boldly for God. God will keep exalting us, even in this world right here. As a child of God, you will be exalted. You just stay faithful, even when it is hard, so hard. Stay faithful, because your time of exaltation will come. God did it for Mordecai. God did it for Esther. God did it for Moses. God did it for Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in Babylon. All right, so where you are or your present circumstances, it doesn't mean anything. As long as you have God, you have everything that you need. It's only a matter of time. The world will know your name. Just be faithful. Be faithful, be faithful, be faithful. And that's what we took from the lesson of Joseph's life. He was faithful. In jail, he was faithful. In Potiphar's house, he was faithful. As a slave, he was faithful. He was faithful for 13 years. And when God changed his story, he really changed his story. Because, the life of Joseph. I could talk about Joseph all day. If you're looking for the teaching on Joseph, please visit our God Girl Initiative YouTube channel. All the teachings of Joseph are on there. Follow the teachings, all right? God girls, God loves you, and I love you. This is Pastor Bella. Much love.